Thank you and good evening. So for next few minutes, I'm going to talk about on clinical metabolomics and new insights in gestational diabetes, and also going to discuss the emerging translational opportunities. So gestational diabetes, it's a glucose intolerance condition of any severity with onset or first recognition during pregnancy. Okay. So, and this definition is applicable irrespective of whether or not the condition resolves after delivery. So, it is during the 10 months of period, especially it starts from 28 weeks of pregnancy and end around 40 weeks of pregnancy. Okay, and it does not include any possibility that diabetes could have antedated the pregnancy. So, what are the risk factors for GDM, which includes obesity or diabetes in first degree relatives, previous history of GDM, any macrosomic baby, and high risk of any high risk ethnic group, and age is a factor, PCOS, and so on. So, when to screen GDM? So GDM usually develops during a mid to late pregnancy, that is 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. And if the screening is delayed till that time, and there is a chance that pre-existing diabetes may be missed, and it is ideal platform that we can perform the first screening, that is first antenatal screening, as early as possible during the first antenatal checkup. So how do we diagnose GDM? It is diagnosed by the criteria called as IADPSG. It is based on OGTT test, and where we will be recording a fasting on our and 2 hour blood glucose level. This fasting, and after 1 hour 75 grams of glucose load, 1 hour and 2 hour glucose will be recorded, and based on these criteria, that is fasting 92 or 1 hour 180 and 2 hour 153, if any of the criteria crossed, then it is diagnosed as, the pregnant woman is diagnosed as GDM. So what are the consequences? So first we will see what is the consequence of maternal risk. It increases the risk of C-section, preeclampsia, and recurrence of high risk of GDM in next pregnancy, around 30 to 50%. What about a fetal one? So there is a macrosomia, jaundice, hypoglycemia, and increase in congenital abnormalities. Then what is how the in vitro part, utero part is affected? There could be LGA of children of those who born to obese mothers will have a risk of 7% risk developing impaired glucose tolerance, and in our age around 7 to 11 years, and maybe breastfeeding may lower this risk. And what is the future risk factors? So the maternal risk around 30 to 60% of developing impaired glucose tolerance or impaired fasting glucose, and of course type 2 diabetes, there is a high chance of developing postpartum type 2 diabetes. And recent studies have indicated that there is a chances of the increased incidence for cardiovascular disease as well. And if you look at the risk factors, so we always say that the common risk factors like age, BMI, family history, but all these risk factors can contribute to 38% for developing GDM. And if you look at other side of the coin, those who are having the traditional risk factors, okay, which do not completely explain all the risks for the GDM. And more importantly, GDM also develops in women who do not have any of these traditional risk factors, like age less than 25, BMI is less than 23, and now no family history. Still they are developing a GDM. So what is happening in our physiology? No idea. Okay, let us move forward. And the prevalence is around 5 to 25% of GDM, which affects all pregnant women. It's depends on the different population or any definition or any screening or diagnostic method used. And of course, GDM is typically diagnosed in the late stages of pregnancy, that is 24 to 28 weeks, and it potentially exposing the fetus to an adverse intrauterine environment prior to direction. And if you start any intervention during that stage, it may be too late to undo the damage from the hyperinsulinemia or hyperglycemia and other metabolic insults. Hence, the correction of high glucose level at the stage of pregnancy only reduces the adverse outcome by around 50%. So, the first trimester biomarker discovery, which plays an important window of opportunity to identify or modify the risk trajectories. And you know very well that the differences between pre-disease versus over-disease. So once if we diagnose, we cannot come back and it is irreversible. So there is a reversible stage which where we can predict using a biomarkers for the unhealthy lifestyle. And early diagnosis, we can control the risk factors by by increasing the physical activity or diet modification or any other factors. So once our disease development is diagnosed, it is totally irreversible. Then only the treatment or cure. There is no cure, only the palliative. So if you look at the traditional biomarkers like TNF alpha or interleukins or any other adipokines or glycemic markers, all these traditional biomarkers or tested biomarkers have the limitation. What is the limitation? If you look at these models have variable degrees of predictive power based on choice of clinical variables, and none have explored in the first trimester metabolites to identify human at risk of GDM. And so I was telling about GDM can be diagnosed or is diagnosed around 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. So you can ask a question, why don't you do the OGTT test in the first trimester itself? Okay, even if you do a OGTT in the first trimester, that is 14 to 16 weeks of pregnancy, usually that will be a first antenatal visit. Still, the OGTT is reported to be insufficient to identify a risk of GDM. So even if you do a OGTT, you will get a negative result and you will happily say that I don't have a diabetes. And within 10 weeks of pregnancy, moving forward, pregnant woman develops GDM during 24 to 28 weeks of pregnancy. So what is the risk or how they are moving forward? It's $1 million question. And we always say that since we are doing a GTT or mostly on sugar or glucose, we always be a glucose-centric. We always say that glucose-centric, insulin-centric, or pancreas-centric, or diabetes-centric. And of course, other side, what is happening beyond glucose or beyond VHF, beyond genetics, beyond diabetes, we should look at beyond that. For that, okay, and one more thing, we just, in the traditional way, we used to say earlier that the molecular pathogenesis of type 2 diabetes is mainly 3 tissues were involved, like skeletal muscle, liver, and pancreas. And later on, it was say that it is omnisocrated, where most of the tissues, like along with skeletal muscle, liver, and pancreas, neurotransmitter dysfunction, kidney is involved, or the glucagon is also involved, and brain is involved. So here always the tissues become issues in type 2 diabetes, and of course in GDM as well. And what are the risk factors? Genes or behavior, nutrition, or any infection agency, society, no idea. So it is a complex problem which needs complex solutions or sophisticated solutions. So for that, we started using, most of the researchers starting using beyond glucose, what is happening at the proteomic level, at the genetic level, or at the metabolomic level, even at gut microbiome level. So how do we understand gestation glycemia? So one, through the metabolomics or proteomics, and EVA studies, which can give more answers how metabolic and reorganization happen during pregnancy, and microbiome, so which can give us several bacterial community that are associated with glycemic traits, and transcriptomics may offer answers to how environmental and genetic factors interact during gestation. So what is the need for metabolomic studies? So if you look at the recent studies, which shows that metabolomic appears to play a biomarker role in both prevention as well as diagnosis of several disease states, including metabolic disorders. And pre-metabolomic study in pre-diabetic population have identified a specific amino acid clusters, which can be of predictive and diagnostic as well. And mostly it's a predictive of type 2 diabetes. And recent investigations also suggested that combining metabolomics along with OGTT could be an effective method of revealing unique metabolic phenotype. And of course, there is an unmet clinical need for an effective technology like metabolomic profiling that has the potential to identify early diagnosis of GGM. So Among other homing studies, there is hardly any data on metabolomic studies in India in relation to diabetes, and especially there's lack of data on metabolomic profiling in the first trimester of pregnancy to predict women who would subsequently develop GDM. So, and if you look at the history of metabolomics, it is not, people can say that from 2012 or 11, where Nature Medicine has published a cluster of metabolites, like a cluster of amino acids, which predicts a development of type 2 diabetes. But from 1928 onwards, there was a paper showing that effect of insulin on the amino acid content of the blood. After 1928, one of the papers showed that in 1969 NEGM, it was published, 4 to 5 amino acids like valine, leucine, isoleucine, tyrosine, and phenylalanine were involved in the insulin secretion during obesity. And finally, the Nature Medicine paper, which shows that the 5 metabolites like isoleucine, leucine, valine, tyrosine, and phenylalanine is the same, were validated, and it has been published in Nature Medicine in 2011. And later on, so many papers have published in metabolomics field in relation to type 2 diabetes, and also the metabolomics of in GDM as well. There are recent papers which are published in diabetes and American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, which show that there is a specific metabolite which plays an important role in GGM. So we should get ready for acid test for diabetes. It's a metabolomic magic. So what are the pitfalls or failures in biomarker identification? So there is either a lack of study design, lack of study execution, and any instrumental or personal failure. Of course, the sample size is one of the issue, and there is age, and there will be not any age or gender match, or BMI not matched, or any clinical variables is not matched, and could be a confounding factors. And in certain things, if you look at this validation, in validations, there is a less sensitivity, low specificity, ROC is less, and likelihood is also less. Of course, we have to come across all these pitfalls and failures in a biomarker identification. So for this, we need to collaborate with chemometric scientists to arrive a meaningful clinical informatics data on biomarkers, both prediction and diagnosis aspects. Again, if you look at recent clinical chemistry, which was published 2 years ago, not a recent, but they clearly showed that regarding the diagnostic biomarkers, are we moving from discovery to clinical application? Is there any improvement in the clinical application on any omics biomarkers? So where they suggested that, and first they looked at last 10 years papers, they have analyzed around 4 to 7 articles they have cited about 107 diagnostic studies. From there, they clearly showed that 44 omic-based studies have made progress towards clinical application. So they recommended prospective studies for biomarker validation and the recent technology improvement or high throughput assays for the biomarker identification. So we at NIMHANS, we started the GDM metabolomic and DNA methylome biomarker study with multidisciplinary collaborations. One from Madras Diabetes Research Foundation, where Dr. Morgan is the main primary collaborator for my study, and from Warwick, Professor Saran Punaswamy, and of course Professor Jurek and Sapna from Helmholtz and Technical University of Munich, and Professor Graham, who is leading the team of bioinformatics, and Sapna is also helping us for bioinformatics in GDM data analysis. And Professor Jurek is a backbone for us, and he used to give the technical advice, and he is the mentor for my project. So with this, we started to develop, standardize, and validate high-resolution mass spectrometric-based analytical methods for metabolomic profiling in pregnant women, and also to investigate whether metabolomic profiling in the first trimester of pregnancy could reveal a differentially expressed metabolites as biomarkers to predict the development of GDM later in the pregnancy. So for this, we have a fantastic cohort called as stratification of risk of diabetes in early pregnancy, a STRIDE cohort. It's an observation prospective study where the aim of this study is to develop a composite risk score to to predict GDM in early pregnancy, that is before 16 weeks of pregnancy. So here we utilize or we are leveraging this cohort for our GDM biomarker identification, where the recruitment of pregnant women during the first antenatal visit have been done, and we are doing the DNA methylation and metabolomic profiling along with the detailed anthropometric and biochemical investigations. And during the second visit, that is during 24 to 28 or 30 weeks of pregnancy, the OGTT will be done to diagnose GDM or non-GDM. And from here, we are planning to, we completed metabolomic profiling here as well. And we have the delivery data, where the delivery outcome, birth weight, and we also following the postpartum cohort. So this is totally, it's an observation and prospective cohort where we can leverage, or if we are leveraging this cohort for GDM biomarker identification. So in this, we already selected the sample selection, the ethical, all this preliminary things got over, and we have completed the validation, standardization validation, and further data acquisition as well. And now we are concentrating on the data analysis aspects, like targeted and untargeted aspects, and normalization and differentially expressed. And finally, we'll be doing the comparison with clinical data and statistical analysis. Here in data analysis part, Dr. Sapna Sharma from TUM, she is helping us, and of course from for the HPLC, UPLC and HRMS, Professor Jurek and Venkat from NCL Pune, they are helping us to complete the study. So we are doing both polar and non-polar metabolites, where we are using the internal standards, and this is the zinc Kelly column we are using for the polar, and C18 for the non-polar, and both in positive and negative mode analysis. We have completed the data acquisition and data extraction also we have completed, and we are now waiting for the final results. So the take-home message from my talk, and this is going to be on the first data on the first longitudinal study on the global metabolomic biomarkers patterns across the whole duration of pregnancy, and also we are planning to do in the early postpartum period. And it will help us to develop a distinct clinical indicators, lifestyle factors, and as well as an innovative metabolomic-based biomarkers database to predict and manage GDM. And it definitely contributes to scientific and evidence-based translation potential of metabolic biomarkers for the prediction of GDM and capacity building in clinical metabolomics and GDM research in India. So I feel that India should make a series of efforts in the research areas of ethnic specific biomarkers and cut points, and we have a lot of good hearts to do research, and we need is good cohorts. So luckily we got a good cohort from a stride, and we are leveraging for this. And we need multiple biomarkers and concentrated efforts by biomarker consortium at the national level. So my takeaways, always the application of metabolomics in population-based studies are the key ones to identify new disease risk factors and lead to opportunities for personalized treatments. And the value of data lies in how we can use and share it. And the collaboration is the key, where we can generate the mega data sets needed for the integrated omic analysis. So this is my team. I would like to acknowledge my collaborators from MDRF, AIMS, Sitapati Hospital, NCL Pune, and international collaborators includes Helmholtz and the University of Warwick and Nottingham. And they are my students. Dr. Gautam has completed his PhD, and Shantini and Sangeeta is working, and new students also joined with me. I'd like to thank my funding agency, India Alliance Wellcome Trust, and CRB, ICMR, DBT, and NHLB US. So, Sprint for Biomarker, together we can. Thank you so much for your time. Happy to take up my questions.